Hey, this is Mike Robbins. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. Hope you're doing well, you, your family, your team, everyone around you as we roll through. As I'm recording this, it's the end of October, almost at Halloween, and we move into November. And my goodness, the election, the presidential election here in the United States. Maybe you're listening or watching this at some point later on, but I want to talk a bit today about how we navigate anxiety and uncertainty. Again, as I'm recording this in the context of what's happening here in the US, we have a very significant and anxiety producing election coming up in less than a week. Again, if you're listening to this or watching the video of this after the election, you know the results. As I'm recording this, of course, I do not know the results. And according to all of the polls and all the experts and everyone, nobody knows who's going to win. It's very close. But while I don't want to talk a ton about the election itself at the moment, although I'm sure I'll have lots of thoughts afterwards, um, to me, it feels like it's a very specific and poignant example of something big that many of us, myself included, are very focused on and have lots of strong feelings about, but ultimately can't control. And by its nature, the significance of it and the fact that we can't control it, it can create somewhat, if not a significant amount of anxiety. So, what do we do about that? There are other things, elections are every 4 years here in the US, and maybe you live in a different part of the world where you have elections at different intervals, but, um, there's so much swirling around. And as we look at our phones and as we consume content, podcasts and videos like this or other things and other aspects of posts and, you know, it's just around us all the time. But again, if we take it out of the context of the presidential election here in the US and just think about things that happen with the economy, with the weather, with decisions that get made inside of our organizations, with what's going on in our families and with our children and with our in-laws. And so much of life is significant things that happen that we can't control. Maybe we have some influence on, maybe we can dictate a little more of what happens or a little less, but the nature often of anxiety is that there's something that we feel powerless about. And again, it's not that we can't do anything. Look, with respect to the election, it's like we can vote if we haven't already, right? We can, volunteer for the campaign that we want to support. And it's not just for president, there's a whole host of things and initiatives and, ballot measures and people running for office at different levels on the ballot so we can get involved and get engaged. We can give money, we can post and tweet and share and message people. We can do lots of things. There's lots of action that we can take, but even all of that action doesn't ultimately guarantee any particular result. Right. And that's again true in life. I mean, you could be a salesperson and it's like maybe the orders are just coming in. Maybe people are contacting you, or maybe you got to call on people and go make appointments and go do sales calls. And right. Maybe you have certain goals with respect to your health and well-being, and there's certain actions that you can take. So again, there's always things that we can do, but oftentimes even the most important things are out of our control. Right? I've shared a bit on the show here in recent weeks and months. Our older daughter Samantha is off at college for her freshman year, and she's been there for about 2.5 months at this point. And it's like, I'm going to go visit her for parents' weekend, and I'm looking forward to that. But like, this is one of the most important people in my life going through a very significant life change. I've been doing everything that I can to love and support her from afar and communicate with her and connect. But ultimately, like, I don't get to determine how her college experience goes. That's up to her and a lot of other factors. So, one of the things that I think is important for us to acknowledge is that oftentimes when big, important, significant things are happening where we have a stake in them, we want them to go a certain way, it can produce somewhat, if not significant amounts of anxiety. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not weird, bad, weak, evil. That's just part of being human. And you've heard me talk about this on the show here before, but the anxiety or the fear isn't usually the problem. It's either the denial or the avoidance of it, or how we choose to engage or not engage with that. Every emotion that we have, from fear to joy to anger to gratitude to sadness to love to every other human emotion you can imagine. There's power in the emotion if we're willing to actually feel it. It becomes disempowering or potentially dangerous or negative if we don't allow ourselves to feel it. Now, look, I prefer feeling joy and love and gratitude and peacefulness much more than I enjoy feeling fear and anger and shame and sadness, but they're all part of the spectrum. And as we know from a lot of really great research on emotions, we can't selectively mute emotions. So if we say, I'm not going to feel scared, or I'm not going to feel sad, or I'm not going to feel hurt, or I'm not going to feel angry, that then mutes our ability to feel joy and gratitude and love and peace. So it's about allowing ourselves to feel the full range of emotions. So if you're feeling anxious right now about the election or about anything else, that's okay. There's nothing inherently wrong with the anxiety. There's nothing inherently wrong with the fear. Now, look, again, I'm also not talking about debilitating sort of clinical anxiety. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that either. But in some cases, we may need some support. We may need some assistance from a doctor, from a psychiatrist, from a therapist, from a practitioner of some kind, or other interventions that we can utilize. And there's so many of them. I mean, look, meditating and journaling and exercising and hydrating. I mean, all of those things are techniques that I use to manage, among other things, my own anxiety. Because I tend to run pretty hot with respect to anxiety. I tend to get nervous and anxious about a lot of things. And over the years, I've learned certain techniques that actually can help me. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through this conversation. But I think it's important for us to remember. And again, you've heard me probably say this before because I often quote it, but Dean Stott's my coach at Stanford, who I've had here on the show, used to say to us all the time when I was playing for him in college. He was our pitching coach, and he'd say, "Men, there's only two things you can control in baseball and in life: your attitude and your effort." And he was right. Our attitude is our mindset, our approach, how we look at things, how we approach things. And our effort, that's our actions, our behaviors, the things that we do. Everything else is some version of out of our control, right? So again, if we think about the election as an example, because it's front and center right now on my mind and many of our minds, what's our attitude about it? What's our mindset? What are we thinking? Do we think it's going to go the way we want it to go or not? Are we feeling confident or not? And again, just based on everything I'm reading and learning and seeing and all the experts and all the data and everything, I don't know that anyone across the spectrum, whoever you're voting for, can feel all that confident that it's going to go a particular way, which just adds to, in my case and in many people's cases, the anxiety of it, right? But our attitude towards it, our perspective, our mindset, that's one thing that we can control. Not the outcome, but how do I choose to think about this? And then there's our actions, our behaviors. What can we do? Both with respect to addressing, like I was saying, you can vote, you can talk to other people, you can volunteer, you can give money, you can advocate for, you can, post things on social media, whatever, or not. But those are all the actions you can take in relation to the thing itself. If there's other things you're feeling anxious about, if you're feeling anxious right now about your health, what's your attitude? What's your mindset? What's your perspective about your health? What are the thoughts and beliefs you have? Could be based on experience, could be based on just how you're wired. And then what are some actions you can take if it's something related to your health, something specific or something more general? You know, Exercise, nutrition, how we take care of ourselves, talking to people, going to see the doctor or a practitioner of some kind, as an example. If it's about money, finances, what's our beliefs? How do we think about it? How do we hold it? Right? What are our attitudes and perspectives about money, about our financial success? What are some actions we can take? Who are we talking to? Are we getting advice and support? Are we doing certain things and taking certain actions with respect to how we make money? As an example, again, it could be something related to your team and your work. There's a project, there's a big deadline coming up, there's a big event, there's a big presentation, whatever it is. What do you believe about that thing? What are you thinking about that thing? What are you saying about that thing? What's your attitude? Can you shift it in some way that is real, but healthy and productive and positive? And then what actions are you taking to prepare for that? I just got done with a virtual presentation that I was feeling a little anxious about. So I had to sit with myself this morning as I was journaling and meditating and like, okay, let me get myself in the right state of mind, the best state of mind, the healthiest, most positive state of mind. And then before I got on the WebEx, which is the platform we were using for the virtual event, I looked at my notes. I made some more notes and looked at my slides and then did what I could to do my last minute preparation. Those were the two things that I could do, that I could control. I can't control how it all went down. I couldn't control what questions were asked or what people thought of my presentation or did they like it or not. None of that. Was it interesting? Was it inspiring? Was it funny? Was it engaging? I don't know. I hope so. It felt like it from my side, but I don't know what it was like for all the people that joined virtually. I mean, it's harder to tell when you're not in the room. Last week I had events in Des Moines and in Dallas, and I had a better sense. But even that, just because people are laughing at the jokes or smiling when I'm saying certain things, or I have a feeling in the room, I don't know what's going on in people's minds. I don't know what they're thinking. And not everyone's going to have the same thought and same reaction. Some people might have thought that guy was awesome, or I got a lot of good things out of that. Some other people might have thought, you know what, that was kind of cheesy and I didn't like that. I can't control that, right? There was a great book years ago that came out that's called What You Think About Me Is None of My Business. I can't control what other people think about me. I can control what I think about me, and not control in like a bad way, but like I have autonomy or discernment over what I think about myself or what I think about most things. We can't control the outcome. So oftentimes anxiety increases when we're trying to control things that we can't control. You and I can't control the election. We can participate. I hope you'll vote if you haven't already. Again, if you're listening to or watching this after the election, it's too late to vote this time, but I hope you vote next time and hopefully you voted this time. But again, that's the primary action that we can take. And then we just wait and see what happens. And we decide how we're going to respond to what happens. I'm sure I will have some thoughts and feelings and ideas in response to what happens with the election, but those will just be mine. And you can take them or leave them. You might agree with them or disagree with them. But ultimately, here's what we can do to more effectively navigate through and manage our anxiety. First and foremost, we got to tell the truth and be honest. What is it that we're feeling anxious or scared about? Just face it. What is it? Right? I'm afraid the other candidate's going to win in the election, and then what that might all mean. I'm afraid that, we're not going to hit our sales goal. I'm afraid that um, I'm going to try this thing and it's not going to work out or whatever it is, right? And we're usually not scared of like 1,000 things. It's like a couple of things in relation to something specific, right? Like when I give a speech, like a virtual presentation today or the two that I did in person last week, or I get nervous that like maybe I'll screw it up or maybe people will have negative feedback or maybe it won't go well. It'll feel uncomfortable. Or, again, if I list out, I mean, I've been speaking professionally for 24 years. There's like only a handful of things that really, in my experience, can actually go wrong. But if I can get honest about what those things are, about anything, you have an interview for a job. I'm afraid I'm not going to get it, or I'm afraid I'm going to forget what I wanted to say, or you know, so be honest about what it is we're afraid of, right? The second thing we can do is notice what we might be adding to it. There's actual real fear. And then there's what one of my therapists used to say to me all the time is there's the real fear, and then there's your fear story. So notice the story you're telling yourself about the thing you're afraid of. Usually that is what drives the constant and oftentimes increased anxiety. It's not the thing, because if we really face the thing, whatever it is, and acknowledge what we're afraid of and feel the fear, it's the story that then keeps it going. What about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? Right? That therapist of mine would often say, feel the fear, drop the story. So can we face what it is, be honest about what we're afraid of, And then notice what the story is and see if, and easier said than done, I know, drop the story. So we face the fear, we acknowledge what we're afraid of, even let ourselves really feel it. Secondly, we acknowledge what's the story that keeps running and can we drop that story? And then the third thing is, can we actually be in action in a productive way? Now, not all action is productive. Not all action is helpful. Sometimes, again, maybe you find yourself like I do in the pantry late at night eating or obsessively exercising or obsessively working or scrolling on my phone. Or again, those are all actions that actually, if done consciously, deliberately, could potentially be positive and healthy. I mean, look, if you want to eat, eat. If you want to exercise, exercise. If you want to scroll on your phone, scroll on your phone. But can we do it on purpose? Can we do it deliberately? Can we do it consciously, not reactively, not mind numbingly, right? If I'm just stuffing my face in the pantry at midnight, or I'm just running miles upon miles upon miles trying to get away from the feeling, or if I'm just scrolling on my phone to try to avoid what's happening, all of those are some version of distraction, avoidance, even addiction that's not having me feel the feeling. But can we take conscious and deliberate action that's healthy, that's productive? Can I reach out to someone and share with them, hey, I'm feeling nervous about this. Can you help me? Can I take some action that feels productive? Can I move away from some action that maybe is creating more anxiety for me? So those are three things that we can do. Again, face the fear directly, acknowledge it, feel it, tell the truth about it. We're not bad, we're not wrong. It's not going to freak us out more, by the way. Leaning into the fear, even though it might be a little scary at first, actually there's power in it and we can move through it to the other side. The second thing is acknowledge what the story is, drop the story. And then the third thing is take productive action. Remember, there's only two things we can control, our attitude and our effort. And if we remember that, then we stop trying to control things that are out of our control, which often increases the anxiety. Look, I don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday in the election. I have very strong thoughts and feelings about it, and I have some anxiety about it for sure. But I'm going to try to practice what I preach here and what I'm reminding you of, which is face the fear, be honest about it, be real about it, feel it, drop the story as much as possible, and take some productive, healthy action. So, those are some things that we can do to manage our anxiety, whether it's about the election or it's about anything else, big or small. It's just part of being human. And if we can harness the power of our fear, of our anxiety, and channel it in a more healthy, productive direction, that gives us real power. So, thanks for watching or listening, whichever platform you may be watching or listening to this on. Make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button here so that you don't miss any future episodes. And there's some links below, either in the comments area on the YouTube video or in the show notes on the podcast episode itself, where you can connect with me on social media or learn more about my work. Best place to do that is at our website, which is mike-robbins.com. Until next time, keep bringing your whole self to work and to life. And remember, we're all in this thing together.